Speaking of a religious faith, and I mentioned people earlier, last segment of the show, I just said we're sort of losing those old values that we had in this country. New study actually backs up that claim. I'll get to that in just a moment. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And this is Top Story. We've been telling you for months about our friends at Tint Lady and how they can, well, on hot days, they can save you money with window tints because that heat convection will be reduced, and that means you won't have to make that air conditioning unit work overtime. You'll save on your electric bill, and then you'll pay in a very short time for the window tinting. This time of year, you may not be worried too much about the heat coming through the windows. You may appreciate it. So why do you get window tints this time of year? Well, because there are ultraviolet rays in that sunlight, and they can bleach, all of the fabrics in your home. They can bleach old photographs that are hanging on the walls. These can happen at the home office, can happen even to the cloth seats if you have cloth seats in your automobile. So we've been recommending you get a free estimate from Tint Lady. You can call and schedule an appointment at 736-8469 or go online, tintladyidaho.com. They've been in business now over at the office at 1887 Highland Avenue East in Twin Falls for nearly 25 years. Open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday by appointment only. And remember, don't squint, get tint. So Pew did a study, and they decided to find out where Americans' religious values are from the last time they did this, I believe, in 2007. And guess what? Americans are losing their religion. Are you surprised by that? I mean, think about it for a moment. Young people have so many other distractions. I heard a guy talking on a radio program a couple of years ago saying that for Americans, NFL football has replaced church. Sad commentary, but if you live in the western states, it does compete time-wise. Back east, I could go to church in the morning and I'd still have a couple of hours before a football game would come on. And this, according to Jewish Week, says Americans as a whole are growing less religious, but those who still consider themselves to belong to a religion are, on average, just as committed to their faiths as they were in the past. And the writer says, in certain respects, even more so. And it says a couple of things. Well, one thing I'll focus on. Americans have become, it says, more tolerant, even religious people, in their views on homosexuality. Whenever I read one of those things, I ask myself, what are they talking about? Are they suggesting that, just 10, 20 years ago, Americans were going out riding at night and torching homosexual nightclubs? Nothing like that was ever happening. My mother's church, it's my sister's church as well, when I was a kid growing up, they had a couple of men who went to that church and they were roommates. Now, being a kid at the time, I just thought, all right, they're sharing an apartment together. Didn't know until somebody told me many years later that they were a couple. Nobody at the church had any issue with them. They were coming to church on weekends, and they helped usher, and they were polite, they were nice. No one said, you know what, let's get them afterwards. It never happened. 9:36, Bill Colley with you. We have a caller, I believe, and you're up next on newsradio1310.com and newsradio1310 KLIX. You're on the air.
Hey, Bill. Good morning, and I just wanted to call and welcome you to Twin Falls. We've been waiting quite a while for someone like you.
Thank you. Actually, I was just telling Don Hall when he was here earlier about how pleasant it is to live here because when you consider the crime that does happen at a place like Salt Lake City versus Twin Falls looks mightily good in comparison.
I'm one of those people who've kind of been sitting back and listening to everybody else, and I'm going to start getting involved.
Wonderful.
And for starters, as I was out of town when the Bergdahl thing came through, and I missed your comments on that. So I was wondering, sometime during the week or something, you might bring us up to date on that.
I don't know that they've actually had the disposition. I know the recommendation is that he not serve any time behind bars.
Yeah.
And I think that's an abomination. I think that if 6 people died searching for him, all right, maybe, I do believe that the government, the military would be well justified to line him up against a wall and shoot him. I don't know that we need to go that far, but I think if he chops rocks at Leavenworth for the rest of his life, I'm fine with that.
I'm with you.
Hey, thank you much for the call, sir.
Thank you.
9:38, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Speaking of religious faith, I was reading a blog this morning from Father Dwight Longnecker, who's a writer at Patheos. And he said there's a new survey out, the Washington Post is reporting on it. It says among Democrats, when they were asked what their religious affiliations were, the largest block said none. Now, think about that for a moment. They booed God at their convention in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2012. What a shocker, right? But none doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have religious faith or that they or faith. And in fact, Father Longnecker said it is very possible that they have what they call spiritualism. Now you go, well, okay, spiritualism. That generally means you can't judge me. It's just they believe in Mother Earth, and if you think it's butter but it's not, or whatever it is, and can't fool Mother Nature. Whatever God they believe in, or whatever tree they worship. But he went on to point out. He said, who's also spiritual? The devil. Something to consider the next time you hear Hillary Clinton out there telling you that she's going to even the playing field for Americans, or Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is the devil, as the devil would come to this planet, or at least in corporeal form. He's a nice guy. Hillary Clinton is probably the devil as you would really experience the devil if you make it to the infernal reaches. And we hope you don't. We'll pray for you. She, by the way, is doubling down. She now says she is going to make it an issue to try and take the guns away from law-abiding gun owners in this country. That's her latest statement. I'm not lying. I'm not like her. But I happened to see the headline this morning. And all I can tell her is Mullen Lobby. If she'd like to come door to door and try, she's welcome to do it. 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hey, and by the way, speaking of people of faith, where's the best place for people of faith to shop? We're going to tell you about that coming up. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, I just got to add this quickly. Our caller from the narco-terrorist state who chimes in every day before he, shouts a few words and then hangs up, was critical of Republicans for trying to set up their own debates with their own debate moderators, as if somehow that was illegal. Well, it's a political party. It can do whatever it wants to on its own dime. Did you know that back in 2008, it was Barack Obama who refused to take part in a debate on Fox News? So I guess if Obama himself was calling Republicans wimps the other day for not being able to stand up to the dopes at CNBC, but he refused to actually debate on Fox News because he knew he might get questions that he didn't like. So he wanted to avoid those. Your good friends in establishment media didn't make a big deal out of that because, well, they don't like to birth his babies. 944, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hey, I wanted to mention our friends at High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, where they process one animal at a time. What you bring in is what you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn, the owner of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, he's got over 30 years' experience doing this. Visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook, where you can find reviews of customers, and you can give High Desert Meat Processing a telephone call for your wild game, but also your domestic processing needs, 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing gets shipped out. Specialty meats, too. Kielbasa, Polish dogs, brats, summer sausage, salami, hot dogs. Oh, goodness gracious. USDA approved. Darren works closely with local beef growers and their programs to ensure quality meat. 734-9949. Telephone number for our show, 736-0300. We have a caller patiently waiting on hold. You're up next on Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX.
Yeah, g'day, mate. I had a couple of ex-wives that told me I was a terrorist down under, but I heard you on Monday. I had to go back, of course, to make sure indeed I wasn't a terrorist. But did you know you asked the $6 million question? You, bloke was talking about the restrictions over there on the City of Rocks. And you said, well, surely you've had creatures out there grazing for thousands of years. That's the $6 million question. They found buffalo bones out there in a cave north of Hanson, I believe. But when John C. Fremont came through here in the Great Basin, his men got mad at him and said, crikey, mate, we're sick and tired of eating nothing but these bloody prairie goats, which we know now are pronghorn antelope. And that's kind of the $6 million question. A lot of blokes say there never was great herds of grazing animals. Now they've after they overgrazed and the cheatgrass moved in, of course they planted some other species from other places that kind of transformed it. But you indeed asked the question that nobody. That's a $6 million question. I just thought I'd let you know that.
Well, hey, thank you. There's a book written by a guy by the name of Timothy Egan about the Dust Bowl days of the 1930s in Oklahoma, and it touched a lot of the western states actually, but Oklahoma got the worst of it. And he mentions that all the sod was broken up by the farmers who had settled there and came through. And yet, if you had large grazing animals going through, in a bison weighs 1,500 pounds, maybe more. Wouldn't the bison be breaking up some of that sod too as well? We tend to forget there was a lot of activity.
Well, they did, mate. But the thing of it is that they could roam freely, and that's the big question. You've got we've fenced them in now. Part of the question is, were they really there in the first place? Now that we've transformed it, where do we go for a model? Siberia or the steppes of the Ukraine? And how many do they need? There's a bloke from South Africa, Alan Savory, who's got a theory on it. Not very popular around here, I might add, of which I suppose you could call me a Savoryite. So you've here again. You've asked the $12 million question. Keep up the good work, mate.
Hey, thank you much for the telephone call, sir. Good hearing from you. 948. Bill Colley with you on Top Story this morning on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Telephone number 736-0300. 736-0300. Got to share with you this quickly from the Daily Signal today. Are companies friendly to faith-based shoppers? See how they rank. A company, actually, it was Faith-Driven Consumers, it's called. It's got all capital letters here, so I assume it's a corporate entity itself. Launched a Faith Equality Index. What is that? They tried to find out which companies were friendliest to customers who had religious beliefs. I don't know how they put this together. I'm guessing, it was a rather complex system. They're not recommending that anyone boycott people who are down at the bottom of the list. They're just saying, reward those who are at the top. And there were no surprises here. I went through this. A lot of companies in the middle, of course, and probably they just have benign attitudes about all of these things. Chick-fil-A. Now, you're shocked, I'm sure, to hear that. Chick-fil-A finished at the top. Number 2 was Hobby Lobby. Number 3, Interstate Batteries. All right, who knows? Number 4, Tyson. They make chicken. Well, they don't make it. Chickens make themselves. Tyson processes them. Number 5, Cracker Barrel. I bought a George Jones CD at Cracker Barrel one time. One of the best CDs I ever came across. 6, Walmart. And number 7, get this, friendliest company to Christians, United Postal Service. United States Postal Service, I should add that part. Coming up, Mike Gallagher, brought to you exclusively by the financial advisors at Waddell & Reed in Twin Falls, 736-6563. Well, it's those Christmas stamps. We're wrapping up another edition of Top Story this morning. We're just a few minutes away from 10 o'clock, 9:54, and still holding steady at 34. Chilly morning today. I have to tell you this quickly. I go out back before I go on air. We have a feeding station for some of the neighborhood cats, some whom are actually, they have masters and live in the neighborhood. Some, though, who might be considered to be strays. They call them feral now to be more scientific. But I went out today, and this was the first day in the last few days I was able to go out and actually feed them some dry food where they didn't get soaking wet and their food didn't get soaking wet. So they were very happy about that. But it was one of those mornings, when you're around the freezing mark or around sometimes just a little bit below freezing. After a couple of days of rain and snow, and then all of a sudden as the sky's clear and you get that cooler temperature, I still believe that the air breathes easier. That is, it feels cleaner. I mean, it feels when you take a big breath. And I can remember being a kid and walking to school, and we would go to school on really, really chilly mornings sometimes. Where I was growing up in southwestern New York State, we would get up in the morning and, you're right at the edge of the Allegheny Mountain Range, and you're also near the lakes where all the lake effect storms come in. So you get a lot of interesting winter weather. But we would walk to school a lot of days when temperatures were below zero. But if you were dressed and you had, good clothes on, you never really worried about that. You would just go walk to school, and it was only about 3 blocks for me. It wasn't too far, although it was downhill going one way and straight back up the hill the other. And so that could be a little bit problematic on an icy day. But in October, we'd start getting that weather where it would drop down into the upper 20s, early 30s. Those first mornings you'd be walking to school. And I'll tell you what, never felt physically better than those days where you're breathing in that cool, clear air on a day like today. There's something very sweet about it. 9:56, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and News Radio 13. I took my coffee outside and stood in the parking lot for a while, just sipping my coffee so I could breathe it all in today. And I thought, I could do this. I could buy myself a ranch somewhere around here, and I could go out on cool mornings, and that would be high living for me in that situation. Got to tell you one quick thing before we wrap up today. I've been doing a running tally on this. This comes from Washington Times. Tom Howell Jr., the reporter. More than half of Obamacare co-ops go belly up. Now, not every state had one. Idaho has one. There are 23 total, or were 23 total around the United States. They've been going belly up more quickly than fish on a hot day in a small pond. Number 12 of 23 has just failed. Consumers Mutual Insurance of Michigan posted notice that it would not sell plans next year, making it number 12 of the initial 23 co-ops to close shop, despite early hopes the program would create competition and slash prices, that is, under President Obama's signature overhaul. The startups had no history of claims on which to base their pricing. They also had to build provider networks and compete with well-established players in the market. Once again, a government solution because, well, they're obviously much smarter in Washington. They hang out at trendy restaurants and sit in traffic for several hours a day and dodge gunshots, whatever it is where the neighborhoods they have to drive through. They're much brighter than all of us, and this was their solution. Obamacare is simply going to be collapsing, and there's no other way to put it. Premiums are going up, in some cases, 300 to 400%. You're going to hear a wailing and crying from the public next year like you've never heard before, at least from a particular segment of it. Rush Limbaugh will follow news from Fox at 10 o'clock. Sean Hannity following Fox News at 1 o'clock today. Glenn Beck this afternoon at 4. Dave Ramsey tonight at 7. Bill Colley telling you that tomorrow, if I get a chance, God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll let me back in here and do this between 8 and 10 o'clock. Lance Clough is going to join us tomorrow, along with perhaps representatives of the Twin Falls School Board and the State Department of Education, and we'll be talking about what's next. A lot of people confused about what's going on with testing for children in schools and Common Core and the like, and we're going to just get some answers. Simply, what direction are we going? That'll be taking place just after the 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Hope you can join us.